Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Just Two Dads with my co-host and my partner, Mr. Sean Francis. I am Brian Altunian. Today, we've got a special guest. We like to spotlight and showcase folks who are doing amazing things in the world. Primarily, we focus on the area of special needs and special needs families. Today's conversation and today's guest, this conversation is going to transcend and it'll be applicable to everybody. If you've thought about, if you know the book Think and Grow Rich, you think about this is January, the beginning of the year. Actually, geez, we're now in February. Our episode 122 now. This is about thinking and growing you. So can't wait for you to hear this conversation. It's going to be fun. We love this guy. It's going to be a great conversation. So stay tuned. Another episode of Just Two Dads. Hello, everybody. I am Brian Altunian, along with my co-host, Mr. Sean Francis, and we do this every week. I say we do that every week, and of course, we just came back from a hiatus week. So occasionally, Chris, we have to take a week off to get back. I'm wearing a jacket, so that's my recovery from having a week off, as I get to wear a jacket. So we've been doing this now for over 2.5 years. Sean and I are in the financial services business together, and so we decided we want to make an impact in the community that has affected our families, which is the special needs community. And we are so fortunate to be able to talk to so many people who service that community, who help families, individuals, dealing with additional needs, special accommodations, and those are heroes to us. We'll get into that conversation here in a second. And so glad to have you on today's call. And before we jump into this conversation, we just want to shout out to a few folks. We've got Sean Hall, who's our producer out in Hawaii, who puts our graphics together, manages all of our social media, manages all of our outreach. And so we love Sean Hall being a huge part of the show since the very, very beginning. We're really excited because we've been talking about this for 2.5 years. We actually have a website under development. and Chris, when I tell you that this has been something that's been a sore spot for the two of us. We've had, again, 122 episodes, and we don't have a live website beyond our YouTube channel. So we finally have the amazing Regina Williams working to put our website together. So we're hoping to have that live in the next few weeks. And we'll be showcasing our guests and the things that they offer, such as books, which we'll be talking about today. I would be remiss if I didn't say hello to all of our family and friends on catching us live on Facebook. If you're catching us live, please put comments there in the comment section. We'll throw some up on the screen if it makes sense. And if you're catching us after the fact on our YouTube channel at Just Two Dads, again, subscribe. Please do us a favor because it'll help. It helps the algorithms. It helps the logarithms move us up. If the content's information, please share it with as many people as you think is appropriate. And if there are any subjects or topics you'd like us to cover, please email us at wearejusttwodads, all one word, wearejusttwodads@gmail.com. You can catch Sean and I on every social media outlet. And so thank you for catching us live and after the fact on YouTube, and for those catching us on hello from Orlando, catching us on all the podcast outlets and WSTX AM radio down to U.S. Virgin Islands. I think I've thanked everybody for joining us. So let's get into the meat of this conversation because this is going to be fun. I want to say one quick intro, Sean, and then I'm going to throw it to you because and I've said this just before we went live. I personally am so inspired by this gentleman who is our guest today. When I say that I've actually been inspired and moved by his personal story. We know Chris Felton from the financial services business that Sean and I are in, and what it takes to move from, where we are from a financial perspective into where we want to be from a perspective of financial independence and just living the life that we want to lead. It takes a mindset shift. And we constantly talk about mindset shifts. And I personally, again, so inspired by this guy's story, and I'm excited for him to share it with you and to talk about his book, which is that story and more. So before we jump into it, I want to throw it over to my good friend Sean, who took the hiatus week to actually put himself in a new location. Look, he's in a different studio altogether. Sean, how you doing, bud?
If you guys can hear me, for whatever reason, my audio just completely went out. So
we got you.
I'll go ahead and continue to speak. Well, I want to make sure that, we talked about the guests that we have primarily are directly related to the special needs community, a community that we both belong to. But along the way, we wanted to make sure that we're just having people on the show that have inspired people, that have inspirational stories and can add value. And we like to say that, to a certain extent, there's no such thing as special needs. We all have the same needs. We might have specific accommodations, but we all have the need to be seen, to be heard, to be understood, and to hope that we can make a difference in the lives of other people. And our guest today is someone who has done that tremendously. I'm going to tell you a whole bunch of accolades about where he is now, but what we're going to get into is how he got from point A to point B. He is an Amazon best-selling author. He is a father. He's a husband. He's a 7-figure business owner. And he got to that point, and he's a prolific and effective speaker and communicator as well. And he got to that point after being in a situation that most would find nice and comfortable with working with a corporation in the corporate sector and a quote unquote nice position, and found out that he was a little less than fulfilled. And one of the things that he is great at is mindset and putting thought into action. And one of the greatest things about both this platform and the business that we've been a part of is that you get to get value from people. And if you're really lucky, those people become your friends as well. And such is the case with our guest today, who's got a new book on the way as well. And that is Mr. Chris Felton. Chris, welcome.
Sean, Brian, awesome to be here with you guys, man. Thanks for having me. This is going to be phenomenal.
Good to see you. This is great.
Yeah.
Love it. I know, Sean.
Brian, go ahead and introduce. I'll see what I can do with my settings. I don't know why I can't hear anything.
That's funny. Yeah, Chris, I'll tell you. When we started this 120 episodes ago, we were on phones, and we couldn't get. We were like, "Is this thing on?" Like we couldn't. And every once in a while, we'll have some sort of technical difficulties, and we go live. Like we don't edit. We're not doing anything heavily produced. And so occasionally this will happen. It brings us right back to the beginning, which, by the way, isn't that what happens, right? We get to the point where we're like, we've made some progress, and we never want to forget where we came from to help have us appreciate where we are, right?
Amen.
So let's talk while Sean's trying to figure out his audio. Let's again, I mentioned you already, and Sean gave you some of your background, but let's tell the story. We generally start with, we think that people who provide service to others are heroic. And while they don't see themselves as heroes per se, we do. And a hero story always starts with, some origin or some backstory. So if you want to go back as far as you want, or that kind of led you to where you are today, do that. Tell us, where did you grow up? Tell us a little bit about your family, and tell us what got you in the position that had you make some of the decisions that you've made to be where you are today.
Yeah, I mean, I can cover. I don't know how long you want me to take, but
yeah, as long as we could be conversational here. And
yeah,
Sean dropped off. He'll come back on.
Yeah. So I'm in Colorado. I grew up in Loveland, Colorado, which is about 60 miles north of Denver. 2 great parents, but they were financially illiterate. They didn't understand how money worked. They argued over money, fought over money, stressed over money, divorced over money.
Sad story.
Yeah. And, and the 5 leading killers in the United States today are stress related. And I believe money's a big root of that. And, my mom passed away way too early at 64 of colon cancer. But I think the root was, stress from the time she was 5 until she's 64. Where's the money? It's just not enough. My dad miraculously made it all the way to 88, almost 5 years ago. Passed away at every stress-induced illness, that you can think of, and died broke. And then I borrowed their habits and thoughts, as we do as kids. And then went to Colorado State University, got an accounting degree, moved down to Denver in 93, and then did public accounting with a large firm, Arthur Andersen, for 7 years. And my turning point was, I worked 120 hours in a 6-day period, hitting a deadline. And I came home, and my brother and I lived together, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And he kind of woke me up out of this hypnotic trance that us humans are in, right? 91% of our thoughts today are the same as they were yesterday.
Yep.
And he got me to do the thing I didn't want to do, which was think. And so I sat down the next day and I got really, really clear on what I wanted. And I was excited because I was actually dreaming again.
I love that.
And then I got depressed because I looked at the vehicle I was in and I knew being an employee was not going to get me what I wanted. So I called it the moment of truth. And it was, do I find the vehicle to get me what I want, or do I do what the masses do, which is give up, shrink it to fit inside the reality? And I decided I wasn't going to give up. I don't have a lot of fears, but my biggest fear is getting to the end of my life and having regrets. So anyway, so I found the entrepreneurial venture that we're all a part of, and launched, that, and left corporate America behind. Holy cow! 23 years ago today, just realized it.
Wow, no kidding.
Yep, 23 years ago today.
That's
and was horrible and stunk at it and figured it out, and then went through a painful, expensive divorce, and then married my second and last wife, Marlo. And she, because I can talk a good game and I can put on a front, and she thought she was walking into sunshine, lollipops, and roses. And what she didn't realize was, I kind of laid down on my divorce. I didn't fight. I just, I financed it all with credit cards, and I was paying my ex-wife $5,200 a month, and I was $250,000 in credit card debt.
Wow.
And I signed a stupid lease, right? We're entrepreneurs, we're on the lease. And and so I'm out of money, and I had given up reins of the money to Marlo, which was the best financial decision I ever made. And I was out of money. I had to pay my ex-wife $5,200 the next day. Wow. And I basically had to go home and convince my wife to give me the money to pay my ex-wife.
Wow.
Stop there for a second, if you will. There's something I think everybody's catching. And I'm sorry, the service that we use, I'm not going to name it, was really messing up there. I don't know what happened, because I could hear audio otherwise. So I don't know if you touched a whole lot on your upbringing and that kind of thing. But listen to, catch the lesson there. They say that, most things are caught, not taught. First of all, in meeting your wife, you acknowledge that, this is someone whose strengths I see, and without beating myself up, I know where my shortcomings are. She can shore that up. So there's a saying that says, happy wife, happy life. Some people hear that and think that it's just a matter of being submissive or something like that. But, I call my wife, the boss, and defer to her in a whole bunch of ways, because she's worthy of that act, because I know that I'm in a better situation when that takes place, and it compliments me. So I hope that men that are listening, you don't just defer to anyone and anything. Defer to that which serves the situation better, and hopefully the person that you've chosen to spend the rest of your life with is someone that does that. And that's what it means to come together as a team. We heard that Tom Brady retired today, again, for what might be the last time. With his success, he wasn't trying to, run down the field and score any touchdowns. His job is to get the ball to somebody else. So know where those things lie. And I think there's tremendous value in that. And then being able to, break down as a man and say, look, here's the difficult conversation I have to have with you. And, essentially have this, conversation and say, here's this money that needs to go out. And for you to say it as you did, get permission from her to do that, that's as real as it gets. I appreciate that beyond measure.
Well, I gave up control of the money, but I don't want to make it sound like that was easy. I mean, that took her a year of beating me down to do it. And I didn't want her to look at it, because I didn't want her to know how bad it was. Yeah. And then it was in a moment of meditation that my inspiration hit me that said, let her do it. And I got up out of the meditation. I took action. You've heard of Mel Robbins and the 5-second rule, right? If you don't take action in 5 seconds, your ego is going to talk you out of it, because your ego's number one job is to keep you stuck. And her book wasn't out. I didn't understand this, but for whatever reason, it was let her do it, because I was looking for answers. And based on results, I didn't know what I was doing, even though I was a CPA and a financial advisor, because my belief systems were horrible. But hers weren't. And so the blessing is I moved quickly on inspiration, because what happens is people get inspired, especially if you have goals, dreams, and aspirations. You're getting inspiration all day long. But often your ego is doing the yeah, but, and I'm not, and this, and, the very limiting thing. So my blessing was I moved on it. And it was very uncomfortable to show her the disaster. But I don't know if we'd still be together. So I did that. And then she got tuned into how the disaster, and she started taking control of the money. And then I have to go home, and I'm like, I got to pay my ex the next day. And I know you got savings. Help me out. And, that didn't go good. She's 5'1". Everyone in my office is scared of her. And, Hurricane Marlowe's not good. And I turn around, she throws her purse, right? We call it the purse throwing incident. And she, starts counting on her fingers and does all this stuff. And every letter, cuss word on the planet. And then I was like, well, why are we still married? And then that went to complete silence. And she went upstairs to, ponder, should I stay or should I go, for the rest of the night? And I was alone, and it was an awakening, man. It was enlightening, because I could just see all the dominoes fall in my life. I'm like, oh my God, my ex-wife never had a chance. My kids are young. They live on the other side of the country. I'm in Colorado. They're in Atlanta. I hadn't seen them for 9 months because I couldn't afford it. I'm paying a price. Marlo, the financial stress was creating physical problems for her.
Sure.
Right. I'm drinking too much. I'm a freaking disaster. And at that moment, this was the turning point. I'm like, wherever I've had a problem in my life, I've always been there. And
right. Common denominators. In that.
Yeah. Right? And so I took 100% responsibility. I'm like, oh, dude, I created all of it. So thank God, I don't know how she resolved it. If she did the, Ben Franklin T chart and plus minus, hey, 15 pluses, 14 minuses, Chris, I'm staying. But, to her credit, and I talk about in the book, she chose to focus on the good things, and our relationship was going to self-sabotage because I was doing the same pattern that I did in my first marriage. Her financial stress was causing me to focus on the negative in her. And so, I call them hand of God moments, but God got her to, focus on me and focus on the right stuff. So, the next day we came together, and she's like, we're not declaring divorce. We're not getting divorced, not declaring bankruptcy. We're not getting jobs, and it's 2008. I'm a financial services entrepreneur, right? It's not looking good.
Yeah. And not an easy time for a lot of folks.
Yeah. And so our first book, kind of born, Couples Money, was born out of that, because she's like, I'm going to go interview, the wealthy couples in our company and figure out what they think and what they do. And then she kind of pointed at me, and she's like, what are you going to do? Right. And I'm like, I'm going to figure out how this mindset keeps creating broke. And I said, honey, I'm not interested. I'm committed, and I'm all in on this. And so my butt was up 4:30. I was journaling, visualizing, imaging. You told me to stand on my head for an hour. I was all freaking in on changing my belief systems. And then what happened to us was, it was jaw dropping. What happened? It was an absolute phenomenal blessing. And as I keep quoting Mel Robbins, it doesn't happen overnight, but it happens over time. And we had incredible blessings. And I was fortunate to level up financially, spiritually. I'm 51. My energy is better at 51 than it was at 41, at 31.
Love that.
Anyway, so it's just been amazing. And so, we'll get into the book later, but that's kind of what the book is about, is, all the different ways I was stuck and how I got unstuck, and the process that I did, and my personal story behind, what backs up what I was teaching, or what I'm teaching in the book.
So let me ask you this, because you just kind of went over it really quickly, but you together wrote your first book. It's called Couples Money. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Couples Money. And so that's, I remember when that came out. And by the way, you can get that book online. It's still available. Amazon. And that's really your joint experience of coming to this recognition that, mindset shift had to change, responsibility had to go. which by the way, everybody can learn from. It doesn't have to be financially. Everybody can learn from this if you've got an issue that's keeping you in place, and then how you as a couple resolved it, and realizing that you're not the only ones in that situation, right? A lot of people face this and don't know how to have the financial conversation with their spouse or their partner. Am I right in that?
Yeah, I mean, it was, you know, it was coming together the next day, and it was, because I think couples spend a lot of time, like they focus on, they do this back and forth. Hey, what's wrong with you? And they don't understand. They're projecting their issues, right? I mean, one of my favorite quotes is, what I see in another, I strengthen in myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, she was focusing on, we were just focusing on the wrong stuff, right? And the law of growth and the law of focus is, I mean, every personal development book on the planet basically supports what you focus on expands.
Right. Let me ask you this, Chris.
That's it.
So obviously you wouldn't have been together, right, at that fork in the road, or more, I better analogy, I think, is that, we all have in the stream of our lives little pebbles that fall within that stream and dictate which direction the stream may go. At that point, obviously it was easier for you to then say, okay, I'm all in, and feel good about the new path, when she says to you the next day after the blow up, look, here's what we're not doing. We're not doing this. We're not doing this. We're not doing that. But we're going to stay together and work this thing out. How much of a relief was it to get that from her, not knowing if the next morning she's going to say, you know what, I love you, but I just can't do this?
I mean, it was huge, right? Because what was modeled to me is, growing up, when it gets tough, I just bolt.
Yeah.
And I'm actually getting ready to deliver a talk on Saturday, and ego's very insidious, and it's easily to get discouraged, right? Discouragement ruins more lives than anything. And
right.
And I started sending out a weekly blog called Thank God It's Monday. And the second one is, how do I reverse discouragement?
And I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. And so you got to have a system to reverse discouragement. And it was just modeled by my dad that, hey, it was getting tough. I'm discouraged. The grass is greener, and that's such a self-sabotaging pattern. And it's not, right. And I did that with my first marriage, because it was getting tough, and I created the whole freaking disaster. And, I give my ex-wife a tremendous amount of love in the book. Because she's been a rock star, and I'm happy she got away from me, to get to the right guy. But but you got to, the grass is greener where you water it, and so you got to have you got to watch your sabotaging patterns. And if she wouldn't have done that, who knows what I would have done, right? Because I was well, I don't know. I was in a pretty good mindset, because I did realize that I was creating it.
That's good. That's good.
So I was shifting, right? And a big chunk of my book, I mean, 1/5 of the book is, shifting. And but yeah, she did that. And then, once again, my commitment to her was I was going to figure it out. And she needed to see that, because she wasn't seeing that. Right. Because I was holding myself back. I was doing all the self-sabotaging things. And I think it was easier for her to commit to that, because she saw me being different.
Yeah. You were willing to walk towards her direction. Let me ask you this, because I know there's people that are listening. And to be honest, I think these are some of the questions that I've had, but can't believe I've never asked you this over the years, when seeing you on other shows and hearing you and Marlo, and a gentleman who's mentored three of us, Mr. Ed Milet, says that several things, which is that things are happening, whether something happens to you or for you, depends on how you receive it, how you respond to it. And then he also says that, many times the things that that challenge you might be the things that qualify you to help someone get out of a situation. In other words, a personal trainer who was once overweight is a bit more compelling than someone who's always been fit. And so my question to you is this: you're in this situation where, well, today, what you talk about, well, where you once were, you're not in a position, you once upon a time, you were never in a position to tell someone, effectively based on experience, how to think the most positive, how to become financially independent, any of those things. And you now speak publicly doing that. There may be someone who's sitting at home thinking, okay, my situation is not like that. I'd like to get out of it and teach people. At what point did you, or what level of success did you have when you go, now I feel qualified to do that, and I believe what I'm saying? Because I'll be honest, in some of the stuff that I give, whether it's, I'm very careful about what I post, and even some of the talks that I've given as I'm addressing groups, I'm very conscious in making sure that I'm walking that walk. And depending on what you've done, you might not have walked quite in that area. At what point did you kind of go, I've done every last bit of this and now I feel confident? Because there's a certain amount of it that you have to kind of convince yourself of as you're leading up to that.
I mean, I've always taught, and you'll get it from the book, and you guys know, I mean, I've always taught with, I lead with my dirty laundry, and I lead with, that, because I mean, I think you can talk about it as long as it's authentic and it's not a show. Right. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you necessarily, I mean, when we wrote the book, I mean, that book's 11 years old. I mean, the stuff's still phenomenal, but mm-hmm. We weren't like in a spot, but man, we made some movement and we were on the path and we were confident. So I don't know if you ever need to arrive to have the conversation. I think you're probably more, well, I mean, you guys get it. I mean, in our business, part of what I do is I gotta get people to buy in that they actually they bring value to the table. Right.
Right. For sure.
And so, and one of my chapters in the book is it's called Be a Spark, mm-hmm. and sometimes you don't have to be all that in a bag of chips. You don't have to be this tremendous, you don't need to be Ed freaking Milet. Right. You just need to be a spark. And you just need to tell people, say, I'm excited about where I'm going. I'm making some changes. And, and I don't know what you call it, imposter syndrome or whatever. But I mean, my first 5 years in the business, I was just telling people where we were going and that I was excited about where we were going. Yeah.
That's exactly what I was referring to.
And it wasn't show. It wasn't BS. It was authentic. It was like, I'm excited about this. Like, I'm going here. Right. And I'm leaving my past behind and I'm moving. So I also think there's tremendous benefit in doing that, because every time you communicate that with energy and excitement, you're programming your subconscious mind. I mean, one of my blessings of building our business in Denver was we had nobody here except me and my two partners. So, this dude had to get up and deliver a message every week. Making $8,000 my first year. Right. I wasn't this phenomenal leader, but man, I was excited about where I was going, and people bought into that.
And the great thing about your story, and as you're describing it, is I think a lot of folks think that their path is going to be here and it's just going to be right to the top, right? Where oftentimes it's here and then maybe plateaus. Sometimes it goes down and then we hit another base camp, if you will, like we're hiking, Kilimanjaro, whatever. We get to a point and then we hit base camp and, we sit for a while and then we launch again. So your first book was back in 11 years ago, was Couples Money. And that was, basically what you and your wife talked about, what you did together and how couples talk about money. And then your career, hand in hand started to really expand and explode from there. And the new book, which is what we really obviously you're starting to talk about, we want to definitely talk about. The new book is really about that mindset shift that occurred. Now where you are today, looking back over those last 11 or 14, 15 years, right? And how you actually got to where you are today. And am I right in saying that? As I joked about it before we got on, I didn't get my promo copy, so I haven't had the benefit of reading it yet. But that's what we're talking about, right? This you got to one point, and then you've now launched, and this mindset shift that's required to get there is the basis of your book now called Think and Grow You. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically, it's 50 concepts. I don't want people to get, worn out by 50 concepts, but I mean, it's literally 50 ways on how I was stuck. And
interesting.
And the problem I solve is stuck. And that's what I'm passionate about, because the reason I wrote the book is, having been an entrepreneur for 23 years, like, dude, I know what it feels like to live in fear, doubt, worry. I know what it's like to be stuck. I was so massively stuck. I know what it feels like when you feel like you're doing everything possible and nothing freaking changes.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that. And as a coach,
Yeah.
it's painful for me to watch people get so stuck that they feel that giving up on their goals, dreams, and aspirations is the only way.
Yeah.
And what I talk about in the book is I was really, really close to doing that very thing.
Wow. You're close to giving up.
Yeah, I was close. I mean,
Yeah.
that night that went down with Marlo. And so, but what I realized was, and the message in the book, I think it's pervasive throughout every concept, is you got to humble down, man. You got to get humble, right? Especially dudes, because optimism and delusion sleep in the same bed together, and
they do.
And you got to humble down, and you got to realize that, hey, man, I got to change. I got to do the work to change, but it's going to be worth it 100%. And that's the message I'm getting across, or I'm attempting to get across to people. I want to help tens of millions of people understand that. And I think right now, 3 years removed from some crazy stuff, I think people are more stuck than ever.
For sure.
I hope people are catching this, because there's several things here. You don't have to have completed the journey in order to take people along with you. So if you're sitting there thinking, of your own situation, and some of you may be thinking, I'd like to inspire people, I'd like to touch people. Some of you aren't there. Some of you are listening saying, look, this is the situation I'm in. I just want to get in a better situation. I'm broke. I can't change this. I don't believe in myself. But there are people that need to hear your story, and there's value in it. So in addition to yourself, is a reason why you want to, succeed and get from point A to point B. And this is whether you have neurotypical kids, you don't have any children, you have children with special needs, or a caregiver, whatever the case might be. There are people that are not yet born who need to see you succeed. And they may, and you obviously don't know it. There are people that are walking around right now that are going to benefit from you doing that, and don't even know. So for the person who's thinking that they need to get to a certain level of accomplishment before they do that, as long as you can say, here's what I've learned, here's what I've changed, and you're still a work in progress, which you should be if you're lucky to live to 500. There's something to be said for that along the way. And I appreciate that, because to be honest, I used to wonder that myself, like, how many things do I need to have accomplished before I tell someone how to do something? And I think that what is missing a lot in the personal development space, but there are exceptions, and I think there's a growing few, is that people label themselves experts and say, here's what you got to do to do A, B, and C, as opposed to, look, I don't have it all figured out, but here's what I know so far, and here's what I did, here's how it helped me, and share it with the world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty clear in the book, in my intro. I'm like, hey, I'm not a guru, and I haven't arrived. And
right.
And the moment I start thinking that, that's delusional. And I think there's a lot of people in personal development, they're just like, they're on the podium and they're like, this, that, or the other. And when I was writing this book with Steve, Siebold sold 3.5 million books, right? I mean, the guy is a freaking rock star. He's like, dude, oh my God, nobody shares their garbage like you. And I got zero to hide. And to go back on that chapter on Be a Spark, man, you don't need to be that. And if you show up in a space of service and love for other people, and you just listen, right? Wisdom's going to come through you. And I've gotten some of the most amazing insight from, it would be considered, if you looked at their results, the most ridiculous people. But
interesting.
But spirit came through them, and I was paying attention.
Yeah.
And so, that whole thing of like, I got to be Ed Milet, I got to be Andy Frisella, I got to be that before I can add value. That's why I wrote, be a spark. And I did a talk a year ago on just all these examples in my life I didn't have results that were great, but man, I was there and I was listening and I was coming from the right space. And before I interact with people, just like I did before this show, like I just invite spirit to come in and speak through me, So let me just finish this thought. So sometimes it's just like, you're being guided to go, have you thought of that? Right? I see this. Everyone's got blind spots. Have you thought about this? Thought about this? Thought about that? And there was, and I got videos from people as I thought back of like, dude, how did I change your life? And they're like, hey, you asked this question. You referred this book to me. Like you did this. And it was a spark. It wasn't me. I was the spark that
I saw you do
fire.
That.
Yeah.
I saw you do that just before we went live. You sat there and closed your eyes. And there's something to be said, for sitting in silence and letting answers come to us that have been kind of like just sitting near our shoulder all along.
Yeah, I just say, think through me, live through me, love through me, speak through me, write through me, right? That's my thought process. And anytime I don't do that, it normally doesn't turn out very well.
Well, and as I said to you, I remember when I first joined this business and started this process, you were a speaker at one of our events, and I was so inspired by you. And to that point, I remember thinking, anybody who gets up in front of a group of people and just shares their story from a place of authenticity, it has an impact. And sometimes we don't even know it. And I think all three of us and others in the business where you stand up and speak in front of a group of people, we have all had the experience where somebody walks up to us maybe years later and says, man, you said this one thing and it changed my path. Like I thought about it, I took it in and it altered the course, or I'm here because of you. I'm here because something that you said. And oftentimes, I don't know about you guys, but for me, sometimes I'll be like, did I say that? What did I say? What did I say? That was so like, I was just sharing my story. I don't even remember saying anything. I wasn't even trying to be inspirational. I wasn't even trying to take in spirit and deliver. But when I think you come from a place of where your heart is at, and this, this, again, providing value, letting spirit, pass through you and provide value for somebody else, it's going to happen, which is why we always tell people it's good to share your story. It's good to be, to be out there having a communication, because you never know what impact you may have. And I love that you've done this. And in fact, 50 areas where you were stuck, even if somebody just read the book and took one a week, at the end of a year, if they read one of your stories and then implemented some sort of inspired, maybe some change, implemented some change once a week, at the end of the year, they're gonna be a completely different person. They're gonna be completely unstuck and completely unstoppable, it seems like. Am I right when I say that?
Yeah. I mean, the book was written in a format of like, it's a topic and it's 200 to 300 words of teaching, right? And that's why when Steve reached out to me, he said, hey, I'm going to coach you. He's like, oh, dude, I'm going to teach you how to, it was my content and Steve's eye for writing. And he's like, it's going to be tight. There's going to be no filler, no fluff. It's going to flow. It's going to pull people in, and it's going to be phenomenal. And he loves it. I'm trying to not, no one's going to call my baby ugly, but I think the initial feedback is it's different. And so somebody can, the idea is, and one of my keys is, people are like, I read 60 books in 3 hours and all, and I'm like, dude, God bless you. But like, no, like for me, I got some books over here. I've been on the same page for a month, right? Just because it's the application of it. Yeah. And everyone's like, dude, all you do is read. I'm like, no, I bring it in. So the concept of the book is simple teaching, kind of my point of view on a topic. It's not like the topics are new, but my point of view, I think, could be unique. And then it's a simple quote, and then it's a resource that I used, a book, a podcast, a seminar, a technology to shift. And then there's an action step that I took to shift to get different results. And then it's my personal story behind it, right? Because I mean, Steve wrote 177 Mental Toughness Secrets, right? One of my all-time favorite books. And he said, dude, if I had to go back and rewrite that, I would have thrown a personal story behind each one. He's like, but we're not going to make that mistake with you. Nice. And so the idea is somebody can grab the book. They don't need to go page 1 to 200. They can go, you know what? Damn it, man. I'm worrying a lot. How did Chris leave worry behind? Let me go to that chapter. And dude, it's going to take you a couple minutes to read. There's no filler and fluff. It's not a traditional book. And then they can do the exercise and move. So my hope is people have it on them. Like 177's been with me for 16 years.
Yeah. Right. Such a great book.
That's how I want people to feel about this, because it's going to help them get unstuck and they're going to be able to reference it constantly.
Love that. And Chris, just so everybody, we're going to put it up here on the page here as well, and for others to see in the chat, where people can see you. First of all, they can buy the book. They can tell us what's on your site, which you've just recently launched.
It's live as of last night.
No, that is so recently.
I mean, it's been a process. I've had phenomenal people help me. Holy crap! I got an incredible team around me that's helped me. The book would be it's unbelievable. It's a team effort. Yeah, I mean, chrisfelton.me is the website. Pre-sales are ready to roll. So there's the book site. And there's, testimonials on that. Then there's the speaking site. So, I have, an unlimited amount of keynotes. So Steve also had me, craft the book. Somebody can pull it up and say, okay, there's 50 concepts here, but Chris, I want you to come in and speak on, these 5, and I'm ready to go. And then I got probably 7 to 8 workshops that I'll create out of that, but also people can reach out and say, Chris, I want you to come in and talk to my team and do a specific workshop on these 8 concepts. And so Steve knew what he was doing. He was coaching me to be able to do it. So so you got the book, you got the speaking, you got workshops, and then I'll start creating some digital content. And we're going to throw all the couples money stuff up there here in the next 30 days. And
so they can pre-order it now, or is that going to launch?
The ebook's ready to go. I think it's $9.97 on the site. I think that just went live. I just got the approval from Amazon. That took like a week for some reason. The paperback should be ready to roll. And then I got a launch event. Anyone that's in Denver, I got a launch event on March 25th. That's going to be pretty cool, from noon to 4 in the Denver, Texan area. So.
Okay.
Good for you.
Fantastic.
That's awesome. And that information location will be on your website as well. People can find you there if they want to go there live.
Yeah, I probably need to get the launch stuff up there.
Info.
But yeah. Yep.
Okay, good. And you're on Instagram, you're on social media?
Yeah, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Yep.
Perfect. Yes, okay, great.
Let me ask you this, Chris.
Find you. Yeah, go ahead, John.
If you had it to do all over again, knowing what you know, because I usually, whenever we have a chance to, have a conversation with someone that's successful, I will usually ask them the following, and it really struck me just now when you talked about Steve Sibbald telling you what he would do different if he was writing the 177 mental toughness secrets for the world class today versus when he did 20 plus years ago. Knowing what you now know, if you had it to do all over again, found yourself back at the crossroads when you and Marlo had that conversation, what, if anything, would you do differently, both in life and or business?
I would relax and chill the F out. Yeah, I mean, I actually did a post on the TGIM that went out Monday. It's called Loosen Up, and you know, dude, I had a scowl on my face. I was just like, you know, I was at an event and one of our big leaders walked up and they're like, dude, do you ever smile?
Oh gosh.
And I'm like, why should I smile? I'm not at the summit yet. And, and oh yeah, I gotta struggle. You know, the hero's journey, the whole, like, you know, it's gotta be hard. It's gotta be tough. I gotta be Rocky Balboa.
Right.
I gotta go through the grind. I mean, we go to our conventions, right? And it's all about difficulty, hard, stress, struggle. I must deserve success. I mean, you and I could spend hours on this topic. I address it a lot in the book.
Yeah.
And then I was at a personal development seminar, and it was a week, and it was, you know, I mean, you had Michael Beckwith there, you had Mike Dooley, you had Mark Victor Hansen, Jack Canfield. I mean, dude, you want to talk about vision stretching, and I could literally feel the stress in my body. I'm like, oh my God, I need to climb the mountain in harrowing conditions. It's going to be a bitch. It's going to be hard. And then Bob Proctor got up. Bob was like 82. And he said, I'm going to tee it up for the next decade. But I'm going to do it in a calm, relaxed manner. He said calm urgency. And I could just feel the stress leave my body. And I was like, wait, is that an option?
I think there's a shift that's taking place. You know, it was an episode a couple weeks back that Ed Milet had with Rob Dyrdek, and he was talking about how he says, you know, I look at some of your posts. This is Rob saying to Ed, I look at some of your posts and you're like, I'm ready to grind it out. I'm going to do this. I got to do that. I'm going to do that, brother. I'm telling you, you know, very WWE, you know, and Rob says, and Ed laughed at himself and then said in response to him, he goes, yeah. And I look at yours and you're kind of like, so what you got to do is you got to get ready, you know, and then Rob also says, yo, why do you have to grind? And it's so funny because it's one thing it almost goes back to the starving artist. If someone wants to be successful with their art, it's one thing to be willing to starve, but it's another thing to believe that you just have to, like it has to hurt. When they say, when you accept that it's going to be difficult, things get easy. But I think what we've done is we've taken to an extreme what it means to accept that it's going to be difficult. They're like, no, I got to bleed. My uniform's too clean. I just, you know, it's one thing to be prepared for it should it take place, but it's another thing to feel that we have to lose our teeth before we can chew, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, the chapter in my book's called "Work Hard, but Don't Make Hard Work of It," and that's, you know, and a lot of my concepts, you know, just mentalities. It's both ends to the middle, right? Because I mean, you get Ed and Andy Frisell in the same room. Holy crap. Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah. Like you're never going to have any fun. You're just like, it's just all, and I love Andy, but you know, you got on one end. I mean, I get Andy's emails every day. I love it. On one end, you got work hard, grind, you know, and the other end, it's, you know, just be a Teletubby and it's, you know, sunshine, lollipops and roses. And it's just, you know, yeah, it's just going to happen. So you want to get those ends to meet. And this, it's more of an art form versus a science. Everyone tries to make it a science. So there's times I get over here and I'm just like, I just want to help people. I just want to make a difference. And you know, and I was in that and that was causing broke.
I'm the mayor of that town or have been. I'm on a sabbatical.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that until you don't put the air mask on yourself first. Right. And then there's been a big chunk where it's been like my goals and I gotta grind and I gotta do that. And that's called, you know, being a hyperachiever. And that's a form of self-sabotage I have. And so, you know, you just kind of get it in the middle where like, I'm going to serve people. I'm going to make it just like my book. I want to make a big impact, but you know, I want it to rock. And I want to get results.
So if you're hearing this versus the visual, right, on YouTube or on Facebook Live, understand what Chris just gave you. You don't want to be this guy, and you don't want to be that guy, so you want to be this guy in the middle.
Yeah. Well, and I think Ed would say today, and I've actually heard him say this, that, you know, in our business, he was a grinder. He worked hard and he was in your face. And today, looking back, if he had to do it all over again, he would take a little bit more time with his kids. You could spend a little more time with his family. He would spend more time with his dad. He would do some of the things that he didn't have to. He could have had a calmer sense of urgency. Easy to say on the other end of it. I think to your point, Chris, it's better to find a comfortable medium where you have a little bit of both. I joke about it. We have recently a book came out of one of the folks in our company called Happy and Strong, which is good. You want to be happy and strong. If I wrote my book would be ferocious and caffeinated. Basically, I'm ferocious and caffeinated because I feel like I'm, when I have my cups of coffee in the morning, I'm ready to go bam, bam, bam. By the afternoon, I'm a little bit more mellow and I kind of hang with it. But getting at it and still having the have the ability to enjoy your life, especially for those of us who have children, it's important. Yeah. It's critical. So we're at that point at that 50. Well, Sean, I know you want to finish that thought, but we're at that moment. So finish the thought and then just jump into the question for Chris. So I'm dying to hear Chris's answer.
I think what a lot of it has to do is these are just a bunch of different ways of talking about raising your consciousness. Most of us, we come into this world before we can talk, before we can walk, as we come out of the womb, we have usually, unfortunately, the greatest sense of who we are than we will ever have later on. That's why I always, you've heard me say we should be more childlike and less childish. And so what happens is, we're talking about as you get less of a sense of who you are, your consciousness is kind of low. The higher the consciousness is, the more you know who you really truly are at heart. You know which one of those voices is you, whether it's the gruff, grinded out guy, the person that's disillusional, the person that's dealing with working from objective reality.
Yeah, I mean I think personal growth and development is getting you all the way back to what you were when you showed up in this world. I mean, you didn't have deserving issues, you didn't have judgment issues, you didn't have forgiveness issues. You were perfect. You were pure love. And
that's exactly it. That's exactly it.
And that's why, I mean, like I said, I haven't arrived. There's a lot I got to work on, but I think I've done a pretty good job of stripping away a lot of that BS, especially over the last 10 years. And that's the stuff I want to help people get. Babies don't get stuck. Right. I mean, it's unbelievable. Yeah. So yeah, I'm spot on with what you're saying there.
It's almost like we, even an atheist can relate to this. You don't even need to be a person of faith to realize that the goal in life should be to get back to creation, whether you're talking about your higher being or just that which you were when you got here. But as Brian mentioned, we're at the point in the show where we usually will ask the following question. Our intent is to add value. So we'll ask our guests at this point in the show, our ability to change the world, no matter how great or small, is tied in some way to our ability or willingness to change ourselves. So if you can, Chris, give us one example, just one, of a belief or thought that you once held dear and really believed strongly that you no longer believe to be true.
I'm only laughing because knowing you, Chris, we're telling you, just choose one, because there's probably more than that. Just one.
No, I mean, I think we hit it. I mean, I think the expect, and my guys roll their eyes because I say it probably 1,000 times a week. I mean, you don't get what you hope for, you get what you expect. And in your heart of hearts, what are you really expecting? And, are you expecting hard? Are you expecting difficult? Are you expecting the special needs community? I mean, I got a 21 and 18-year-old, just freaking blessed beyond belief. I hit the lottery with my kids,
Love that.
And they hit the lottery with their mom, and so I can't even imagine, and I don't even want to try to put myself there, but what are you expecting? I mean, there are going to be obstacles. There's going to be things that happen, but I did a post a couple weeks ago. It's like, move like water, man. Like, it's just,
Bruce Lee.
Yeah. You have a problem with a problem. You have two problems. And that just has to be hard, has to be a grind. That was my expectation. That was my dad's expectation. He died at 88. He died broke with significant regrets.
Yeah.
And I know why he was my dad, you know, because I had to see that. And so hard, difficult. Yeah. I have obstacles. I have challenges all the time. I mean, I had, you know, some weird health stuff come down but I'm moving like water. Right. And I'm leveling up my expectation. And I think it's just a great question to sit back and go, based on my results, what am I expecting to happen? Because you will get exactly in your heart of hearts what you expect.
Yeah. And I think most people are honest with what they expect. Yeah.
Yeah. And I use the term in the book, like, just hopium doesn't work. Right. You can't live on hopium, and you can't, you know, hope that things change, and you insist on staying the same.
Yeah.
So the work on you to level up expectations, to expect better things is the game.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So the book is Think and Grow You. You can get it on Chris's website, and I think we put the link also here in the chat, where you can get it on at barnesandnoble.com. Go to his site at chrisfelton.me to see more about Chris and see some of the things that are, you know, that he's posting, and that his story, his testimonials and whatnot. You're going to be fascinated just as much as you can. We love spending the time with you, Chris, and wish you tremendous success, not just in this book, but continued success in life, and being a point of light for everybody. So thank you for
Thank you
taking
so
the time.
much, Chris. Yes, and give our best to Marla.
Yes,
I will, man.
This
thank
has
you,
been
guys.
great.
Yeah,
And as we wrap,
been a blast.
Thank you. And again, thanks Sean Hall for keeping us on track. He's like, guys, 50 minutes, hit them. You know, he's telling us no all the time. Thank you, Sean, for your support. And for those of you who caught us on live on Facebook and seen us after the fact on YouTube, for those catching us on podcast outlets and WSTX AM radio down in the U.S. Virgin Islands, thank you for hanging in there. I hope this was inspirational and fun for you as it was for us. As I say at the end of every show, empathy and love is the most important, you know, especially right now. See somebody with a situation that you don't quite understand. Have some empathy. Don't be judgmental. Ask questions and, you know, be less judgmental. Have some empathy for your fellow person. You don't know what they're going through. And if you look at the world through lenses of love, the world looks completely different. So my, you know, goal for all of you is that more empathy and love in your life. And with that, I'm going to throw it to Sean to sign us out for the show. Again, Chris, thank you so much for spending the time with us.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Yeah. Again, thanks for everyone for tuning in, whether you're catching us live or after the fact. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And also want to encourage you we'll have the link for the following two things in the show notes, which is Billy Footwear. That's a company that provides adaptive shoes. A fantastic story behind the creation of that company. Billy's been a guest on the show. The other thing we're doing is, Brian and I mentioned that we're giving great consideration to starting a men's group, not limited to, but including those that are parents or caregivers to those with special needs. We'll have a link for a survey that we've created that will be in the show notes. And then you can also feel free to write us at wearejusttwodads@gmail.com. And again, remember that everybody needs to be seen. They need to be heard. They need to know that they matter. And I want to, as always, thank the women in my life without whom I would not be. That is my mom, Jan, and my amazing wife, Laura. And wherever you are within the sound of my voice, thank you. And remember that we love you.
We love you. Thanks again.